All right, let's dive into a really fascinating idea today. How power operates, not with a big show of force, but by just making itself seem completely normal. We're going to break down how political succession can be practiced right out in the open, often with the accidental help of the very people who oppose it. So let's kick things off with this big question. In systems where leadership isn't just a matter of winning an election, how does a successor actually get chosen and, more importantly, accepted? The source we're digging into today argues it doesn't happen with some grand announcement. No, it happens quietly, through symbols and repetition, hiding in plain sight. To really see how this works, our source material zooms in on a specific real-world example. And it all begins on a very public stage, a famous bridge in Istanbul. Okay, so let's set the scene here. You've got these huge public rallies happening on Istanbul's Galata Bridge. The official reason for the gathering, to show solidarity with Gaza. Now, a central figure who keeps showing up at these events is Bilal Erdoğan, who happens to be the president's son. And the reaction that our source really focuses on comes from Özgür Özel, the leader of the main opposition. At first glance, this all seems pretty standard, right? A political event and a predictable response. But as we're about to see, there is so much more going on just beneath the surface. So let's take a look at how the opposition officially responded. On the face of it, their argument sounds incredibly reasonable. A principled stand for democratic fairness. The opposition leader, Özgür Özel, takes what really seems like the high road. He says, look, we can't be hypocrites. We can't demand the right to protest for ourselves and then turn around and say others can't. It sounds really noble, very statesmanlike. And his whole argument really boils down to this. Hey, giving permission for this rally, that was actually the right move. The real issue, he says, was all those times the government said no to opposition groups. So for him, the whole thing is about a classic double standard. It's a really strong argument about equal rights and fair process. But, and this is a big but, according to the source for analyzing, by focusing only on the process, the opposition completely missed what was actually happening on stage. Okay, let's get into this, because this is where the analysis really starts to peel back the layers and show us what's underneath. The source asks this really critical question. What if focusing all your energy on the fairness of the rules makes you totally blind to the political game being played? What if the whole debate about permits is just a distraction from a much, much bigger story? This slide just lays it out perfectly. You've got two totally different ways of seeing this. The official story, the one the opposition is focused on, is that this is about fair access and administrative double standards. But the source material says something completely different. It argues this was never just a protest. It was a carefully staged visibility ritual, a piece of political theater designed to introduce the president's son as a natural public figure, a potential successor. And why use Gaza as the rallying cry? Well, as the source points out, in Turkish public life, it's a morally untouchable subject. It gives the event instant ethical cover and makes it almost impossible to criticize. I mean, who's going to stand up and question a rally for such a righteous cause? It's the perfect shield for the political performance happening underneath. And this brings us right to the core concept of the whole analysis, what the source calls the normalization trap. And it shows exactly how the opposition walked straight into it. So here's the key idea: procedural opposition. This is what happens when you stop arguing about what is happening, the real political goal of the event, and instead you only argue about how it's happening, like were the rules applied fairly. The entire focus shifts from the political act itself to the administrative paperwork. And this shows you the playbook. It's brilliant, really. Step 1, you stage a huge public event starring the potential heir. Step 2, you wrap that event in a sacred cause that no one can criticize, like solidarity with Gaza. Step 3, you just wait for the opposition to complain, not about the event, but about the process, the permits. And boom, step 4, the heir's presence in the spotlight is no longer seen as a political move. It just becomes a normal, routine part of public life. The source uses this incredible metaphor that just perfectly sums it all up. When the opposition's entire fight is about getting a permit, they're not challenging the existence of the political stage itself anymore. They've already accepted it. At that point, they're just haggling over the seating arrangements. So that brings us to our final section, and it's probably the most shocking conclusion from this whole analysis: how the opposition, with the very best of intentions, ends up giving a moral alibi to the exact thing they're trying to fight. It's a really tough thing to wrap your head around, but the source argues that by getting stuck on procedure, the opposition accidentally gives the whole spectacle a stamp of legitimacy. They help make it look like just another normal day in politics. So how does this alibi actually work? Well, by saying giving them permission was the right thing to do, the opposition helps frame this political rehearsal as a totally legitimate civic event. Their complaints about fairness actually signal to the public that, hey, this is just ordinary politics, even if the rules are a bit unfair. And just like that, a potential dynastic project gets laundered into a boring debate about administrative procedure.
And this is the key takeaway. This is what the public ends up hearing. They don't hear a warning that a political succession is being rehearsed. They just hear that a legitimate rally happened, and the only problem was some unfairness with the paperwork. The real political message is completely lost.
So this analysis leaves us with a really provocative final thought, one that goes way beyond this one event in Turkey. It forces all of us to ask, when we get into these debates about rules and fairness and procedure, are we actually challenging power? Or are we just, without realizing it, negotiating our seating plan on a stage that someone else built for their own purposes? It's a critical question for anyone who wants to understand how power really works.